How's it going? This is really exciting. Thank you all for coming. This is amazing. Look at us. Look what we're doing. Look what we've already done. Are we ready to get settled and begin?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so I'd like to start first with a land acknowledgement and then get into talking about what we're doing. Oh my. So, today we are gathered on land that is located on the traditional village sites of various tribes and indigenous communities who made and continue to make their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. The legacy of colonialism means indigenous communities are still reclaiming the knowledge of who lived in this area, and so we would like to acknowledge any and all groups who lived here. So this is the 5th Elevating Impact Summit. Isn't that amazing? I said, isn't that amazing? There are 5 of these already, and that's a pattern in its own right. And so patterns has become the theme of the day. And then also there's there's another theme of today that has to do with this particular framework that's in your book. If you have page 5 of your hymn book. And on page 5 of your book, there's a framework that we're using to construct the entire day. And I'd love to talk to you more about this at another time. But essentially what we're using is this intangible framework that is designed to help you modulate your time and your attention between searching for ideas and applying new ideas. And so some of the areas outside here and some of the talks we're giving today are about just purely searching for ideas, or the inquiry side, the inquiry aspect of the framework, of just inquiring for no reason but other that inquiring is a groovy thing to do. Is it not? Is it not? I'm not enjoying this feedback. I need more. I have dreams like this all the time. I don't know if this is one of those or not. And then there are times and aspects of the talks that are up here and what's going on out there that are just about ideation, jamming on ideas and coming up with new ideas. That's when you're searching for new ideas and then actually applying them. And that's a beautiful space to be in. So we have some really cool ideation stuff going on here. Does that also sound like a good time? Yeah, so if you could, this is much better. So if you could put into your life times where you're inquiring for no reason other than your brains and souls were made to inquire and search understanding, and then find ways to apply that understanding to what you're doing, that's the other part of this quadrant system. And so there are moments set up here for that. And then, my favorite, are the moments that are set up to help you incubate new ideas and synthesize the ideas. And those are times when you're not searching for understanding and not applying anything. Those are the times where you're letting your mind wander. Does that also sound groovy? Yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about mind wandering and daydreaming, but we have a whole aspect upstairs in the whole incubation chamber that's set up to allow your mind to wander with a synesthesia experiment, an experiment in the hidden patterns of your senses and how there's sort of like a borderless terrain between your senses deep in your subconscious. And so we're going to use olfaction and watercolors. Because why not? And then, of course, there are times when you just implement all these things that you've learned, and that's the work you're going to go out and do after participating in a conference like this. So there's some wayfinding around here and some indications as to what quadrant that aspect of the conference is in, but let's keep going. What else do I have here? Ooh, I have a copy of the Tao Te Ching. Never show up in public without this. Ursula Le Guin's verse. Should I read to you from this later? Yeah. I will, but later. Come on. Got stuff to do. So, more introductions. This whole day is a pattern in its own right. It's an organic, cohesive collection of cells tethered together in a smart spiral like a fern or a drifting galaxy. So don't just disappear and come back when you feel like it. It's not one of those conferences where you can just kind of choose which thing to go to. Rather, I'd like you just to kind of like groove on the whole day and take part in that organic reality. Can you do that? Yes. Yeah? Right on. Say yes again. I don't believe you. You seem like you're like, well, I'm going to go to lunch for 3 hours and come back. Don't do it. You'll miss a part of the spiral of the fern of the drifting galaxy. And, of course, thank you to the sponsors who made this event possible. We're grateful for your dedication and support. Just think of the courage it takes to do what we're doing at all. And then the courage for someone to actually lean some money in this direction and attention and time and resources in our direction is pretty amazing. So just a mild golf clap, if you will. No, but snap for the sponsors. Yeah. Does that sound like rain? Listen. All right, see you guys later. That was good. All right, can I control my slides? I'd like to control my slides, please, to the powers that be. This is sort of a metaphor for entrepreneurship and how we have intent sometimes. That intent doesn't manifest the way we expect it to. Hey, Martha. So, slide, please. Whew. Do I have to keep saying that, or? I will. I like that. So, this is an entrepreneurship summit. So I want to just cover some ground a little bit about what's going on. And I love when trying to figure things out, diving to the etymology of words and the meanings of words, because there's sort of like this hidden pattern in words themselves and in their histories. So you can always learn a lot. An entrepreneur is a particularly annoying word, if only because I am, like 9,000 years old and still can't spell entrepreneur. And if it was the world of typewriters, I'd just like E-dot every time. But happily, I don't have to. But look at that word, what a mess. Entrepreneur, it's from French, no surprise there. And in the French breakdown of the word, it actually means literally to take between, to manage, to move, to change, to move something from one area to another. And apparently, according to the internet, the original use of entrepreneur actually meant a theater manager, a stage manager at a theater. Isn't that cool? I said, isn't that cool? Because we are currently in and we are a bunch of entrepreneurs, so that's kind of cool. And then also, it's related to the Sanskrit word for self-motivated. Yeah, so this is kind of like this self-motivated person or people moving things from one region to another. That's pretty intense. But by the end of the 19th century, it began to mean businesses adding value and taking risk. So it started to evolve from that kind of theater context to something that's a little more familiar to us. But it wasn't until the 20th century that it began to take on that disruption in value and novelty that we know now. And it actually wasn't until Peter Drucker in 1985 called it a means to exploit change as an opportunity for different business and different service. And it's something that was teachable. So it's really to me, that seems like a relatively new term. I remember 1985. Raise your hand if you remember 1985. How you doing? So, in 1985, by the way, just to show how not long ago it was, what were the top 3 songs in 1985? Does anyone remember? It was a great year for post-punk, but they didn't make the top 3. The top song, have it the next slide, please. The top song was Careless Whisper by Wham. Do you remember that one? I don't ever want to dance again. No, you. The horn, right? So that wasn't that long ago the word took on this meaning. The second most popular song was Like a Virgin by Madonna. And then Wham again, Wake Me Up Before You Go-Go. What a year for Wham. Wow. So, however, I could do this all day, but I won't. We are also, slide please, we are also in a group of social entrepreneurs. And that itself is a newer term still. Now we're getting really far away from the medieval theater manager. And social entrepreneurship was best defined in 2008 by John Elkington and Pamela Hartigan in The Power of Unreasonable People. Have you read this book? It's a good book. And in it, they say social entrepreneurs develop and operate new ventures that prioritize social returns on investment. Snap for that. Social returns on investment. For example, they aim to improve the quality of life for marginalized populations in terms of poverty, health, or education, and attempt to achieve higher leverage than conventional philanthropy and non-governmental organizations. So that's taking this concept of entrepreneurship and elevating it. See what I did there? Did I do it? Social entrepreneurship, and that's 2008. What were the top 3 songs in 2008? Slide, please. Number 1 song was Low by Flo Rida. Some fans, I see. And then number 2 was Bleeding Love by Leona Lewis, and number 3 was Alicia Keys, No One. But Low is a good song. Low, and like Careless Whispers is a song about being down, and Low is a song about being high. That's a good one. Low. Have you grooved to this song before? Say yes so I can stop, please. I will groove to it now. So, let's get Flo going. Thank you. So, this is an entrepreneurship, and I think we've settled the score on entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. It's an entrepreneur and social entrepreneur summit. Let's groove on the word summit for a minute. Summit shows up in language around 1400, and it comes from Middle French somme, which means top of a hill, and I guess that shouldn't that shouldn't surprise us. We kind of use it that way. Next slide, if you don't mind. This is kind of the stereotypical version of summit, but I think this also works as a summit here because we are at the summit at the top of our careers when we're doing something like this. And this is certainly the top of entrepreneurship. And it's sort of the peak of capitalism, if I may, when we're taking something like entrepreneurship and using it in the way that we're using it. So we're sort of at our summit, and we're here together. And when you're up at the summit looking at something, you get something else. You get this high ground perspective, and you get to look down and see patterns. Can I see the next slide, please? So when you're high up and look down on the earth from that great height, if you will, that's when you recognize patterns. And that's what this conference is really about. We are at the summit of our careers, and perhaps the summit of our entire civilization, and we get to look down now, gather together and look down and see these patterns. And this is a river delta from space. Isn't that glorious? I said, isn't that glorious? That is not a rhetorical question. It is totally glorious, and that's what we get to see when we're looking from on high down into the world. We can see these patterns. So that's what I want you to use this summit for. I think that's good. A good way for us to leverage the fact that we're gathering, is to look down on what we're doing and find these patterns. However, it's not just like you can only see these patterns when you're high above. When you're down in the trenches, if you get good at finding patterns at a summit like this and make this a habit and leverage your mind wandering and your inquiring and your ideation, when you're down in the trenches and in the valley, as it were, you can still find patterns. You can look up and find patterns. Next slide. You can look up at the stars and notice patterns there too. So I want pattern finding to become a skill that we can all gather at any time and enact. And interestingly, because of that, when you're looking at patterns from the valley, in the trenches, and looking up at your life, and see the patterns there, and then when you're gathering at summits and looking down and seeing the patterns, you often notice that they rhyme. And if you look at the next slide, you see this glorious confluence of this kind of as above, so below, where we're looking at a valley system and looking at a leaf, and they totally rhyme. And why is that? I don't know. I don't know, but there are sort of a beautifully large number, but finite number of patterns in the world that seem to rhyme with each other. And interestingly, these patterns evolve over time. Patterns aren't just written in stone. They can move and change, especially these social patterns that we're working with. So I don't want us to see patterns and be intimidated by them, or see patterns and see them as something written in even quickly drying clay. I think these patterns are things that we can affect change in. Yes? Yes. So, speaking of changing patterns, I'd like to talk about, just for a second now, in introducing our next speaker, the pattern of the Elevating Impact Summit that it is now that we have 5, and a pattern that I hope repeats and evolves. And there's no one more qualified to talk to us about how this pattern has evolved than Carolyn Mcknight. Carolyn is the founder of this entire endeavor, so she knows how it began and has no idea where it's going, because none of us do, but I think she's qualified to speak to that beginning. Carolyn is a remarkable person. Has anyone here met Carolyn? Do you know Carolyn? Who are the lucky among us? Yes, let's just clap for even knowing this individual. So exciting. Carolyn this is why I dig her, she has that as above, so below going on. Carolyn has a PhD in mythological studies. Snap for that. That's like, yes, of course she does. So she's got the as above, and then she's also an entrepreneurial leadership development expert. Right? So she's got that so below, and it's those kinds of sideways, lateral thinking, ideation experts that we need to discover patterns and to affect change on their evolution. She co-founded PSU's Impact Entrepreneurs and has an entire previous career as a tech executive. This woman is not an easily repeated pattern. Carolyn was there at the conception of this initiative, and it just makes sense, don't you think, to start from the beginning. So I'd like to introduce Carolyn to you all. Carolyn, are you here?
It's my joy to welcome you once again to the Radical Center. Thank you. We believe that we as social entrepreneurs, social innovators, occupy that space. We work for shared value, not shareholder value. We work to disseminate intellectual property, not just protect it. And our market opportunities are market failures, social problems. So I invite you to join us in the Radical Center. Again, the center for one person is the fringe for someone else, so it's contextual. Wherever we work in the world, we will find ways to move towards each other so we can move forward together. That's the notion. That's that place of the radical center. How do we move towards each other to move forward together? There's been no time that's been more important than today. We wake to more news of tragedy. We can move toward each other. And we believe that place of shared value, of collaboration to solve these intractable social problems is a place we want to be. So I invite you to join us in that. And as Corey said, as above, so below, there are patterns that we can see. There are also internal and external patterns. And I want to just speak about that for a moment. If we have the above and the below, and we come to this radical place of the center, what is that internally? The radical center. Out externally, we've just glossed. Internally, that's the still point in each of us. My radical center, internally, is a place where I can move with confidence, with equipoise, with wisdom and compassion into the world as a force for a higher level of work. And so I encourage you today, the invitation is to not just join us at the radical center, but to look at our internal patterns and what's happening in your life, in your work. This may be an opportunity to reevaluate, to ask some questions and go to a new place. What is the pattern that's operating, not just out there, but internally? And what might we do to shift it in the direction that has more social, economic, and ecological value for all of us? First century BCE, Horace said, nothing is an unmixed blessing. Nothing is an unmixed blessing. So when we look at the tragedies of our day, evil sometimes generates good. How do we turn these circumstances into something worth redeeming? His contemporary, Virgil, said, lucky is he who has been able to understand the causes of things. And as systems thinkers, we realize how important this is. To look at the patterns and to find our own internal patterns and to shift them when necessary to create more value in the world. So I hope that you will join us also. Let's get caught trying, as we say. Are you willing to get caught trying? Yes. It might be too early to ask you to be rowdy, but we want you to be rowdy today. We want you to get rowdy together, come together, collaborate. So let me ask you again, are you willing to get caught trying? Okay. Thank you. Some of you have heard me say many times, we must give birth to images. They are the future waiting to be born. The future enters us long before it happens. Again, we must give birth to images. They are the future waiting to be born. The future enters us long before it happens. Let's give birth to some new images today and move towards each other in order to move forward together. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you our provost at the university. She's just joined us in this last year, Dr. Susan Jeffords. I spoke to her last evening and she was expressing her deep commitment and interest in social innovation, social entrepreneurship, for which we're enormously grateful. She comes to us from 12 years of experience at the University of Washington Bothell campus, where she was the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. She has her own history of academic credibility, her work there, as well as academic leadership, and interestingly, a deep commitment to international engagement. So it's my pleasure to introduce her to you. Please welcome Dr. Susan Jeffords.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm not going to touch that. It's an honor to follow you. I am so pleased to be here this morning and to greet you all at the start of what promises to be an incredibly exciting day. I want to say first how pleased I am to be here on behalf of Portland State University. I came to Portland State University because of the institution's dedication to creating positive impact. So while I'm not surprised that PSU is sponsoring an event like this, I am absolutely thrilled and delighted because it affirms everything that I came here to do and to be a part of this kind of community. It's reflective of PSU's ethos, our mission to let knowledge serve, and our academic and community engagement. I also came here because of the city of Portland and because this university is embedded in the heart of one of the great innovation cultures in the country. And as we all know, great cities all have great universities at their hearts. And when you can have cities and universities partner around innovation, powerful, powerful things happen. But for me, the particular draw of Portland State and Portland is that the kind of maker culture, the innovation culture that exists here is not innovation in and of itself, but it's innovation in partnership with community for social impact. And that partnership between this city and this university can make powerful, powerful changes and lead the rest of the country, I believe, in ways that we can help to address many of the challenges that we face today. So I look forward to hearing what you all develop out of today's conversations that reflect those forward-moving efforts. Social innovation and entrepreneurship are embedded across Portland State University in the School of Business, but also in urban and public affairs and in many other areas. Our students, faculty, and staff are continually identifying gaps and creatively inventing solutions to problems. There's a culture and an underlying nutrition in the university that seems to grow change makers. And it's not just me who says this. Portland State is very proud to be an Ashoka University Changemaker campus. And I'm very proud of that distinction and recognition because it's the leading designation for social innovation in higher education. Our students, faculty, staff, and partners are all critical ingredients in our distinguished standing as an innovative campus, represented by many of the people who are here in the room today. For example, I'm thrilled that we're joined by partners from University EAN who have traveled here all the way from Bogota, Colombia. Will the delegation from this university please stand up if you're here? We're very much looking forward to partnering with you. And our partnerships are not limited to industry or other universities. In fact, there are nearly 40 high school students here today. If you are one of these high school students, please stand up. And I have a great idea for where you can go to college. So please talk to me later if you have any questions about Portland State. So today is an embodiment of that innovative spirit that I think infuses Portland State and the city of Portland. That drive to pursue new ideas and to create meaningful impact in partnership with communities. So I thank you on behalf of Portland State for everything that you're doing here today and for the things that you will move forward out of these powerful ideas. Thank you.